Okay, so I thought we'd start off with a little experiential activity. So I need 3 volunteers from the crowd. Don't be shy. I see 1, I see 2. Number 3, you get to try some really nice skincare products on your hand. Right back there, sir. Come on over. Okay, so I thought we'd start with a little, we'll call it a blind test, even though your eyes will be open here. You're only going to be able to judge based on texture, feel, immediate moisturization. These are 2 facial moisturizers. Scent, sure. Another thing, obviously, we're right here. It's immediate. You're not going to see long-term results here, but I really want you to kind of feel the difference between each left hand, right hand. All right? Okay.
Two different skincare products, one going on the left hand, one going on the right hand.
Let it sink in, feel it, note the texture. Okay. And now, sample B. On your left hand. I mean the right hand, sorry. All right, let's get some immediate thoughts. Let's start with the left hand, your first sample. Anything you've noticed immediately?
I like that it leaves my hand glassy and dewy.
Glassy and dewy, 2 good adjectives, all right. How are you feeling about sample A on the left hand?
It felt a little bit greasy at the beginning, but now it's better.
What about you?
I actually noticed that there's no scent. Yeah.
A good thing or a bad thing, depending upon what you like in your skincare. Okay, and what about on the right hand, sample B?
It dries down to like a more matte satin finish.
Any observations of sample B?
The scent? Yeah.
Do you like it?
Yeah.
And what about here?
The color.
In the jar, but you can't see it on your hand, can you?
No.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you very much. So, one of these,
Do we have a preference?
oh yeah, that's very important. What do you think?
I would use the first sample, so sample A.
Okay, left hand sample
Left
A.
hand, yes,
Okay.
Left.
Okay, and?
I gotta say, right.
All right. Sample B on the right. All right, thank you very much, guys. All right, so without naming any names here, sample A on the left costs $290. Sample B on the right, we had 1 for sample B, cost $23. We are here tonight to talk about this distinction. What separates a luxury cream from a mass cream, from a premium prestige cream, and there's also the derm clinical space. So thank you so much for joining us, and I thought we'd sort of dive in with the basics. So bare minimum, what does our skin need for optimal health? And Nancy, maybe you can start us off here.
Thank you. When it comes to optimal health and maintaining that, consistency is really the key. What you need to have is a good cleanser, a good hydrator, and protection from the elements. Some of the types of ingredients to look out for are things like antioxidants, things like vitamin C and vitamin E to protect against elements, SPF, and also gentle, non-stripping cleansers. Dr. Rieder, what is the importance of, I'm sorry. Dr. Rieder, can you build upon the importance of this basic skincare routine and why it's so important?
Yeah, I think when you're thinking about skincare, I think, like you said, consistency is the most important thing. And what sort of Bettina said when she was introducing the panel is that you don't always have to spend a lot of money to have a good skincare regimen. And when you're actually looking at all the research and development that happens in the world of skincare, a lot of the big companies are the ones that are selling products in the drugstore. But if you look at skincare in general, what makes people's skin look good, what helps with anti-aging, and what helps with decreasing the frequency and the severity of dermatologic diseases like eczema, dry skin, and acne, your epidermal barrier has to be in a really good state. So, and often you can do that by just using skincare that you can get in the drugstore.
And what are distinctions here? Like, how much of this can you really get over the counter at the drugstore, at the department store? What are you seeking out sort of a dermatologist advice for? So, when people are coming into the doctor's office, what are they typically looking for that maybe they can't get, just by going into the store?
So it's a good question. I think it really depends on the reason the person comes to see me. My clinical practice is a mixture of cosmetic dermatology, medical dermatology, and then because my training is also in psychiatry as well, it's sometimes people with perceptual disorders or doing something to their skin that maybe they should be articulating with their words, but they don't have that. So we won't talk about that aspect of it where the psychology and the psychiatry play more of a role, but they may be looking for something that's more bespoke. And so we'll be talking about skincare brands that may be much more familiar to people who are working in the beauty space and the skincare space than are in like the medical clinics. Like the level of knowledge that people have in private practice dermatology is very different than the level of knowledge that people are having in academic dermatology, which is where I spent the first 11 years of my career. So I'm not sure if I answered that question appropriately.
To some degree. And to build on sort of these basic needs. So your skin needs to be clean, it needs to be hydrated, it needs to be protected from the elements. Maybe we could talk a little bit about skin barrier health, which you touched on, Nancy. What is skin barrier health, which is sort of a newer buzzword in dermatology, and why is it so important?
When it comes to skin barrier health, it's all about protecting that outside interface with the environment. If that's working at its optimal function, it means that things that can be maintained inside the skin, such as your hydration and the normal functioning of the skin, can be maintained. You're going to see your ingredients work better when the barrier is intact. Now, when the barrier is not intact or unhealthy, this is where we see these signs such as the appearance of changes in texture, the appearance of fine lines, the environment wearing down the skin, and also something that Dr. Rieder would see in his clinic, like manifestations from his patients. Like, what do they typically present as?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously the aesthetic concerns, and a lot of those can be ameliorated just with good skincare, but true dermatologic disease. Acne happens, and a lot of the luxury skincare brands will, I think this is really interesting and clever about the way that they don't actually market their products to treat a specific dermatologic disease, but a lot of people end up getting better. Their acne gets better because they're using luxury skincare, so people think about the products like that. But you want all these things can sort of go haywire. Again, dry skin, any sort of inflammatory condition of the skin can go awry if you're not using appropriate skincare and not being really gentle with your epidermal barrier.
And I think what's interesting too about your epidermal barrier, so this is the first way of protecting your skin. It's also the first point of interaction that you have with the outside world, and that's social too. And I think what's so interesting about your dual area of study is how a lot of times the way we perceive our skin, the way we treat our skin really is it really manifests in the way that we feel about ourselves emotionally and the way that we interact with the world socially. And I'd love if you could speak just a little bit about that, sort of how sort of our skin is the first place that we interact with the world.
Sure. Yeah, I think you did a good job of articulating that. That's, the skin is our largest organ, and I think people forget that. There's all sorts of people who are like biohackers now, and everybody thinks that they can sort of hack their own skincare, which I think is interesting because it's accessible to us, right? But no one would try to biohack like their kidneys or their liver, but people think that, oh, I can rub a skincare product on and I can do better. But it's the largest organ. There's a ton of different feedback that happens. We have a central stress response. The skin has its own stress response that is like basically a cutaneous analog of what happens centrally, and things that happen to the skin on the outside can actually feed back on our internal organ systems. But thinking about just the way that it makes us feel, it's our window to the outside world. It's the way that everybody in this room at some point in their life has had acne, and acne affects people in very different ways, but everybody has had acne. So for me in my practice, people coming in with like 1 or 2 acne spots, it can be a crisis, right? People are on TV and they're having socially public profiles, and this can be an emergency, right? And it can, to someone who's been living with acne or quote unquote bad skin for all their lives, one acne bump may not bother them. but it's a very intensely personal experience, and one in which the psychology and the skin, especially inflammatory skincare, really is intertwined. And I think, unfortunately, or the reality of it is that it affects the way that the outside world interacts with us as well. And we know that people with better skin are received better by other people, and that's been proven in the medical literature.
And for all of these reasons, you may be unsurprised to learn that the global skincare market is projected to reach $260 billion by 2027, and that's with the premium and the luxury tier projected to grow at an annual rate of 8%. We're going to get you in here, Brennan, so get ready. So, all of this being said, I think it's important for us to kind of decipher what exactly is luxury skincare, and why are we, both literally and metaphorically buying it? So maybe we can start, Nancy, maybe you can tell us a little bit, and Brennan, chime in here too if you want, sort of about the tiers that we know, right? We all know drugstore, we know department store, but there's a murky middle in there too. So, Nancy, can you walk us through that sort of those classifications a little bit?
Sure thing. So when it comes to luxury, when we think about branding, it's all about scarcity. But when we think about the beauty landscape, it's a very different landscape. What we're thinking about, we have mass, which are things like The Ordinary, Olay, those kinds of products that are easily to find, easily accessible. We then have prestige, premium, which are the things that you find at Sephora. And these things have subcategories such as indies and independents and OVs. Then you have the luxury category, which again is also subclassified in different tiers. You have your premium luxury, or things like your Prada skincare, for example, your La Mer's. Then you have green skincare, and then you have other subcategories of the indies, such as Kiehl's. Then there's another category on top of that, which is your derma and clinical skincare, which is a very separate category altogether, where you find your high concentration, powerful actives administered or found at dermatology offices. Brennan, do you want to chime in?
Should I? Well, actually, I had a follow-up question for you on that, but I should have asked you backstage when you were talking about this because it was really interesting. But do you get the sense that skincare, like luxury skincare, is more, stratified or striated or more segmented than like other luxury sectors? Luxury cars, luxury bags, even.
Definitely. I think when we come to the luxury sector, what we've seen in the last few years is the rise of green luxury. So what we're seeing now emerging on the market, so things like luxury refillables in very elevated packaging, which are expressions of individuality. Something where the luxury category does differ from the other categories within beauty is the stratification of the aesthetics of the formula. So for example, we were talking backstage about highly fragranced and very signature fragrances for some of those very expensive creams, for example. We also see packaging is also where another form of expression. And also it's a status symbol too for many people. So where we see that they might be the same skin cream that's in there, but it's also the expression of their personality. So there's more emotional ties to luxury skincare. Dr. Rieder?
And we were also having this conversation, I'm going to throw it back to you, about sort of the idea of quiet luxury kept coming up, and how with skincare, it's sort of like you can't see it. You don't you can't kind of look at someone's face and say, oh, they're using La Mer or they're using The Ordinary. You can't tell, right? But there is this emotional connection that a lot of us have to our skincare products. We know we're using them, and if you're active on social media, you're probably talking about it as well. But it's still a certain kind of luxury, and Dr. Rieder, I'm wondering, if you can put on your psychiatrist hat for a second too. It's sort of like, why does it create this emotional connection? Why is there this need to kind of, have this sort of a status symbol with your skincare? Why is the luxury sector growing so drastically in the skincare space?
And I think it's an interesting question, and I think when I saw it happening, I thought it was kind of crazy, right? Because I can understand a kid in a minimum wage job and saving up all this money so he can buy some Air Jordans, and everybody can see that and he can be proud of them, and like it's his little way of tapping into the sector of the market that maybe he didn't have access to, and he feels like he can be part of something. Same thing with somebody driving a BMW. Everybody sees that. Or wearing like a Prada bag, like everybody sees that. In the skincare, I was like, this is totally insane. People are buying $250 cream that's literally just a moisturizer, right? And there's like many different ways that you can use that money. You can put it in the stock market. You can put, I mean, like there's so many different ways you can use this, but people want to do that. But it gives them access to something that's a bit of a reach, I think, or it gives them, feels like they're part of this community where people are, it's like I think we have some disagreement about this, and maybe Brennan can chirp in after me, but I think it's like the silent luxury, right? Nobody knows that they're doing it at all, but it's like if you know, you know, like the celebrities are doing it, but people don't have connections with these celebrities, but I do because I know such and such a person, or this person at this marketing agency told me about this new, you know, green luxury product that no one's going to know about for 2 years in the United States market, but it's huge in Korea right now. So I think it's like that like silent luxury that people want to be a part of.
And from a formulation perspective, though, are they better?
Yes, typically luxury skincare invests a lot more in innovative ingredients and formulations. So something like retinol, hyaluronic acid, which is in every single skincare product. But surprisingly, when you're formulating a hyaluronic acid to be efficacious, there's a lot of nuances that go into that formulation, and not every single hyaluronic acid is created equally. So what you need to consider are the types of structurants that you're using in the formula to make sure that it's delivering the efficacy that you're claiming against, but also delivering against the aesthetics that the consumer is after. Similarly, with retinol, it's super difficult to formulate to stabilize it. And so that's where luxury skincare does play a very big role in terms of understanding and being able to invest in stabilizing formulas and making sure that they're delivering against their promises.
And Brennan, you know, this is something I'm going to ask you the same question. You know, this is something that you cover a lot in your journalism. You know, are these products better? You know, does luxury mean better?
Yeah, and it's hard to say, isn't it? Because it's like, and I mean, from my perspective, I always, every time, and I mean, a lot of us have had this experience, Celia, I know you've had this experience, like you see a lot of, when you're working on staff in a magazine, you just see like a lot of launches come out all the time. It's like a full torrent, and a lot of these products kind of look the same. So picking them out from each other is already a little bit difficult, but then kind of parsing the information that you have is even more difficult. And I always go into it from a perspective of, you know, you want to find out that this is like the most amazing invention that's ever been made, and you want to feel like it should cost $300 because it's literally like regenerating your skin. And of course, the truth is a little bit more complicated. And so I wrote a story in last year in 2022, or published in 2022, but it was I'd worked on it for the better part of like 2 years beforehand, and my editor and I had talked about, you know, what if we take one of the most successful like luxury skincare products and we just do like a full review. You know, a lot of, you know, beauty product reviews are, you don't want to read them at length because that would be agonizing to do, but you know, so like, you know, what if we take this 300-word review and we just like look at every single part of this product and we blow it out to like 2,000 words and let's see where that gets us. And it's a hard sell to make to an editor, but so the product that we chose to do was Augustinus Bader, the cream, which is like this amazing, amazing product. It has this amazing marketing behind it. And I remember working at Allure full time when the cream came out, and there was this, you know, gorgeous event at the Greenwich Hotel. You know, this skincare brand, as many skincare brands do, appointed a PR agency to sort of put it in the right hands, and so a bunch of magazines showed out for this event, and I just remember watching this presentation and it being really, really amazing. Like, you know, talking about this doctor and his medical technologies and how incredible they are, how miraculous they are, and then look, and he made a moisturizer, and that's fabulous, and let's all try it, right? And then when you take the marketing apart, and when you look at, you know, every single statement and you evaluate it, you start to see sometimes that there's a distance between the way a product is marketed and the way a product is. And I think that, you know, the billion-dollar business is sort of hoping that consumers fill in the blanks in the middle.
And I think there's some crossover, like having used some of these creams. Some of them you can see a difference. I mean, we all can see these things, though. I mean, if you use something for a period of time and you see nothing happening that is a claim, well then, you know, maybe you move on to the next thing. I think oftentimes, if you do see improvement or whatever it is that you're looking to get from these products, then that creates more of a deeper relationship, right?
Right. Yes. And I should say that another kind of complicating factor of it is that in a lot of beauty journalism, like the exchange is happening between the writer, the editor, whoever's tasked with disseminating the information, and the brand itself. And the brand, obviously, not nefariously, but has a vested interest in not giving you all of the information you want, all of the testing that they've done, and you have to kind of navigate that. And as a consumer, I think it's even more difficult.
And I think what a great segue too into the fact that social media has been a huge driver into creating the demand for luxury skincare. It has, it is. I don't know the numbers, but the views are insane on TikTok, on Instagram. People are finding product through social media. People are talking about social media. People are trading scientific details on social media. So, Brennan, maybe you can speak a little bit more about how you've seen that happen too. Just the way that these products can catch fire on social and then just take off to a whole new stratosphere.
Yeah, and I guess this is where I'm going to push back on the silent luxury thing, my good friend Dr. Rieder. But I think that there's a, to say that word of mouth is like the engine by which beauty commerce runs, I feel like is almost reductive, because it's all of it. There are people in boardrooms all over the world trying to figure out, how do we get someone's friend to recommend this lipstick to their friend in line in the bathroom, or how do we get this stranger to, issue this recommendation? And so I think traditionally a lot of that has been celebrity marketing. You cede it to Victoria Beckham, hoping that someone who gets interviewed as much as she is, she'll bring it up the next time someone asks her like what lipstick she's wearing.
It's likely her own.
It's likely her own.
From her own beauty brand.
I know, and that's a whole nother thing. But there's this kind of fascinating way in which social media has allowed us to of course talk about our own routines and the things that we use, and it's this quiet luxury thing. A toner like Biologique Recherché P50 has like a lot of clout in the beauty industry. It's something where, actually, I just want to ask, how many people here, if you don't mind raising your hand, look into the medicine cabinet when they're at a stranger's house? Okay, that's a good number. And so, unless anybody's looking for pharmaceuticals, I feel like there's a good chance that you're kind of trying to glean some insights from the person, and like you can look at that, really really fragrant, kind of like stinky $900 moisturizer and be like, wow, this person's rich. Or you can see that like French toner that you saw someone mention in an interview and be like, oh, this person's kind of in the know, And to Dr. Ilaya's point earlier, there are a lot of different stratifications about what those products say about you. Do I care about the environment? Do I care about spending money on skincare? all of these different things that you can connote. And so to me, it feels like skincare is like the loudest luxury, because you have to tell people that you're using it. So the last thing I'll say is that I worked at a website that did a lot of beauty interviews, where we would just sort of interview notable people that were aspirational about their beauty routines. And that was, of course, like a huge commerce driver, I guess, because we would link all the products down and you could sort of shop them as you were going along. And I think that people would see that on social media, or see people doing interviews about their routines, and these celebrities, these notables, and start to get the idea that I want to tell people what I'm using, and so they take that shelfie of their medicine cabinet, or they do like a full this is what I'm wearing, get ready with me sort of thing. It's just social media has really spun it out of control.
And to bring you guys back into the mix here, another thing that I think has happened on social media too, people talk a lot now about Gen Z's market power, and being in the industry for as long as all of us have been, what's interesting about Gen Z is how knowledgeable they are about skincare. What's new and different with this generation is that they're aware of all of the acids. They know the percentages. They know the difference molecular weights between the hyaluronic acids. But what has ended up happening is that it begs this question, which is that if everyone is an expert, is anyone an expert? And there's a lot of misinformation out there too. So, Nancy, I'd love for you to maybe jump in here quickly. Having been on the scientific end of things at a number of very big brands and corporations, when you see that happening, what are your first thoughts?
My first thoughts are cringe. No, because what happens is that the true experts and the scientific research and the investment that goes on behind the products and the truth behind those products, such as the clinicals, the massive R&D teams that are backing these products, is lost in the mix because of a loss in translation. And something that consumers need to be aware of that there are resources out there that they can access to make informed decisions about what they're buying, about their skincare. And of course, the dermatologist is a great resource. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Rieder.
Sure. I think it's really actually kind of frightening how much people know about their skincare right now. And I can imagine a situation where I may be intimidated by someone who's bringing up ingredients that I never heard of before. Once or twice, I'm at the point in my career where I know what I know and I know what I don't know, and I'm always willing to learn about new stuff. And people teach me about new products all the time, especially things that are happening in Korea and things that are happening in Europe that haven't made it to the United States market. But yeah, the young people know a ton about skincare, but often they know it on a superficial level. But you know, on the topic of expertise is one that I think is a very important one, even beyond skincare, and like it infiltrated our political system, and like, you know, during the last couple elections, like, and the people who are appointed to different positions of power who are running our country without relative expertise. So this is happening in the skincare industry as well. And this may be not a very popular thing to think about, but a lot of the people who are offering expertise in the world of skincare, some people know what they're talking about, and some people don't. And it doesn't always, their qualifications or their credentials don't always match up with their level of knowledge. Like, there are people who are dermatologists who don't actually practice dermatology. They may be dermatology trainees who may be better off learning how the skin works and how diseases work than getting in front of the camera and getting paid by a skincare company to talk about products that they don't really know a lot about. And there may be an esthetician who's been in practice for 10 years, or someone who is a skincare enthusiast who's just like obsessed and knows a lot about skincare, who may be a better expert in talking about these products. But, you know, people get this de facto expertise next to their name because of their training and credentials, but it doesn't always line up that way. And there's always, I do work with skincare companies. I work with a ton of them, and I always, you know, you have to disclose this, but anytime you're getting information about skincare and it's coming from someone who's paid to give that information, you have to just take that information with a grain of salt. And that's why that's why I always work with skincare companies that have ingredients that are tried and true and that have been tested, and there's clinicals behind them. And it's not always the luxury skincare brands that do that. Most of the time, it's the things that you get in the pharmacy.
Which is, I think, a good segue into sort of where does this panel see the future of luxury skincare going? Clearly, there's a lot of noise out there. So what is true luxury to each of you in the skincare category? Where do you think it's going?
You're looking at me. Yeah.
You know, I don't know. Brennan, do you want
What
to?
is true luxury? I don't know what true luxury is. I'm hoping to find out. But I just feel like my, like, you know, desperate plea is that we're obviously in this industry that we love. We love skincare. We love skincare products. We do. Like, we want to live in a world in which you can go to a drugstore and you can shop different, you know, molecular weights of hyaluronic acid. You know, it's fabulous and we all love it. But there's just this, I'm sort of feeling personally like we're just, you know, it's just a little too much with the products and the launches, and every new brand is kind of coming to market imagining that you know, they're going to start as a body brand, but then they're going to span categories and they're going to be the new Lauder, and you know, that's a noble mission and everything. But I would love to see any beauty brand, but especially a luxury brand, you know, scale in a way that isn't by launching products. Like, you know, does that mean I would love to see more beauty publications, of course, not that that's exactly as lucrative as you know, a product enterprise, but you know, creating spaces where people can experience beauty, but it's not so, you know, commerce driven. That's what I would like to see.
So true luxury is less is more. for
I think
you.
so.
And
It's quiet.
it's
isn't it?
it is a little quiet.
Say.
And then, Nancy, let's go to you. And it can be from a formulation perspective too. What is truly luxurious?
I think
at
what's
this
truly
point?
luxurious in luxury skincare is the innovation, bringing to market new types of molecules that can deliver against these aesthetic concerns that plague consumers, new patents, more publication, bridging the gap between the science and the marketing more transparently, more overt before and afters. I mean, at Kiehl's, we were founded in an apothecary, and that's our bread and butter, sharing clinicals before and afters, identifying new ingredients, patents, publishing around the research that we do, not just for a skincare product, but also contributing to the wider knowledge of skin biology. And over to you.
And we got into an interesting conversation in the green room with Dr. Rieder about how, and Nancy mentioned this is happening in Korea. If you think about it, when you get a procedure done at the derm office, there's a lot of brands that we're all familiar with seeing in there. The CeraVe's, which is an incredible product, and what's starting to happen globally is the demand for quote unquote luxury post-op products. So if you're spending X amount of dollars on your procedures, you want to feel that you are also getting the highest end post-procedure topicals. This is something that I'm sure you're thinking about or people are asking about in your practice, but to you, what is the future of luxury skincare and what is true luxury in the derm space?
It's a good question. I like skincare a lot, and I like thinking about skincare, and I think the psychology behind skincare. But I think luxury skincare is whatever makes you feel good and whatever you want it to be. I think we didn't talk about this before, but I think it's a lot due to the good work that's been done by probably starting with the millennials and Gen Z and I guess Gen Alpha as it's called, what I just learned. People are much more attuned to their own health and wellness. So in some ways, good skincare is a proxy for your own attention to your own health. And my generation, I'm Gen X, we do a terrible job, especially men. Like we go to the doctor when there's a problem. Like we go to we're carted in after we had the heart attack, right? We're not doing anything preventative. And I think that's one of the biggest things that's been a challenge, especially seeing men in my age demographic, not necessarily New York men because we're a little bit more sophisticated, I think. But it's tough. But I think that what I'd like to see happen, and we didn't even talk about how these scientific studies go about in the skincare world, is bridging that gap between the science and the marketing and thinking about maybe more scientifically based ingredients and novel ingredients that do more to the skin. Again, largest organ in your body with effects that can happen centrally as well. So those are the kinds of things I think about and sort of trying to cut beyond the marketing, having beautiful products that have a nice sensorial experience that people want to use, but may be able to give you a little bit more than just a nice fragrance and a nice epidermal barrier.
Nobody's asking, but my idea of luxury skincare is that combination of the feel-good factor and results. I think everybody wants a product that works, but I think I think a lot of that emotional connection does come from something that just makes you feel good when you put it on, not to be discounted. So, one more thing I'm going to get into, and then we're going to open it up to some Q&A. We didn't, aside from going to your doctor's office, what are some other reliable sources in the world full of noise where you can get, real ingredient information, formula information that either you guys use or that, we can direct the audience to?
I'll go first. Beauty magazines like Allure. I write for these two publications. I write for Allure and I write for Airmail Look, and both of them are fact-checked. We have a research staff, which a lot of beauty outlets don't, and so they have to lean a little bit heavier on the brand to audit the claims that the brand is making, which is not ideal when you're trying to get information out to a reader. But So I think that those publications, like the New York Times, also it's a little bit more boring in their science section. No offense, but they do a lot of great beauty reporting. And then I use EWG a lot when I'm looking up information about ingredients, and that's the Environmental Working Groups database. They have a wonderful one, and I use Skin School a lot. Do you guys use that? It's this website, Skin School, SKOOL, and you can kind of plop in a product URL, or you can look up a product and it'll show you dupes, or it'll kind of cross-reference a bunch of different ingredient lists at once. so it can kind of give you a good sense of, if you're looking up these luxury creams, kind of where they would sit on the drugstore shelf.
And what about you, Nancy?
Being a scientist, I first and foremost always go straight to the source of the research. So oftentimes I leverage beauty magazines such as Allure to find these new research articles and then go straight to the source and then make an informed decision about whether it's legit or not. Also, EWG Skin Deep is a really good resource. It's basically a cliff notes for ingredients that are used in the different products, and also cross-referencing Personal Care Council as well to get the latest on the safety, allergy type ingredients. And one more that I quite lean on as well is Science Direct. It's a little bit heavier, so if you aren't versed in the sciences, it's a great one to just get a quick review of what is niacinamide, what is glycolic acid, to give you that whole background on a particular ingredient.
And what about you, Dr. Rieder? When your patients can't come see you, how do you advise them?
Advise them over Instagram. Right. So I try to make good content on Instagram, and that's based on the questions that come up to me all the time. And I'm a little bit behind in my content, but I think there's a lot of really good sources that are on social media. Just they thought I would talk about something different, because the resources that Nancy and Brennan pointed out are very good. But there's a lot of good content that comes from social media, but you have to be very careful about figuring out what is legit and what is not. And it's a good place to sort of ask your dermatologist, if you were seeing a dermatologist, is this person legit? Is this person not legit? I've heard this. Is this true? Is this not true? But I think that people like video content. People like those bite-sized pieces of information. And the same questions come up over and over and over again. And there are ones that come up in my office that I try to proactively post about, so people who are both my patients and people who are not my patients and can't travel to see me will be able to have access to that information.
Speaking of proactive questions, we have time for a couple of questions in the audience if anybody has any questions. Okay, right down here. Let me see. Oh, you got it? Okay. Right there.
Thank you for the conversation. So I work in fragrance distribution, getting European brands into the US. And I find skincare and fragrance similar, that it's a very personal experience and also an oversaturated market. So I was just curious your take on marketing and storytelling of these products.
As far as sort of how they impact perception and ultimate.
The message across, whether it's the science backing or the genesis of the brand.
It's a good question for Celia, actually.
I'm going to throw it over to Brennan. I'll chime in as well.
Yeah, what's the most interesting part of like a fragrance brand store, or like a, full, almost.
It's personal, so it's like
Right. Yeah.
related to each individual.
I know it's hard to talk about fragrances, right? Like, it's like talking about your own dream to somebody. It's just, because to your point, because of its like personality. Right.
You have to remember that a lot of these brands do heavy market research.
Yeah.
So, a lot of times when you see those campaigns come out, they are the result of a lot of research that has gone into, you're never going to hit everybody, but the idea is that you're probably going to hit a lot of people based on the work that's done. I often find myself being drawn to the brands that it's very clear they did not do market research, but it feels more genuine to me in that, a team of marketers did not inform their lip oil launch. They launched, making this up, like a brow lamination kit because that was what made sense for their brand identity at that time. And none of us are normal consumers. I can see through a lot of these things, but I find that stuff tracks for me more than the things that are trying to reach sort of the common denominator that have been heavily market researched. I don't know if that answers your question.
I think that was a perfect answer. I'm gonna throw my weight behind that one.
Who else has right up there?
I'm going to actually ask a question because this is the power of the mic. But it just felt like it actually rolled really well with this, whether it's in publications or in the kind of like McNews, I call it McNews, like the TikToks of the world, right? What is your thoughts on the dupe, right? There's always like, you can have this brand, but this is the dupe, whether it's like the Trader Joe or like get it at your local pharmacy. I'd love to just know from a scientific and like obviously
Go ahead,
educational
Yeah,
perspective.
Nancy, that's all you.
It's all me. When it comes to dupes, you can mimic the aesthetics of a formula, you can mimic the experience. However, where it differs is where it's working to affect the skin. So a dupe may not work as fast or as effective as, you know, the more expensive cream. So that's the only watch out. It's how much of the testing has gone behind it. Also, in terms of safety as well, you know, like, is it going to be suitable for your skin? It may be a dupe, but it may not be suitable for your skin.
Yeah, I think you have to be very careful with that. And there are certain ingredients that I'm not a cosmetic chemist, but there are certain ingredients like vitamin C that are very difficult to formulate, and they're very difficult to stabilize in a laboratory setting. So whenever someone says, oh, I have a dupe for SkinCeuticals, you have to be very careful about that, especially if it's really cheap. Because if it's really cheap, it means they definitely didn't have the money to do the research and development to know if this product is going to be stable, it's going to be effective on your skin, and it's going to give you your actual good results. Sometimes luxury skin care is actually worth it.
Go ahead, sir. We cut you off.
No worries. Thank you. I have the power of the microphone now. Thank you for the conversation. I really love this. What is going on with regulatory compliance, and how can some companies completely get away with like a green stick that, like, you know, sucks like all the dirt from your pores and sells like a million one-offs and continues to do business? Like, what is protecting the consumer that isn't simply governance at the organizations?
Go ahead, Nancy. And Brendan, I bet you have some thoughts on this too.
Okay. Or you would.
I think you should go first because I kind of want to see what you have to say.
When it comes to regulating what's communicated to the consumer, we have things here in the US, such as the Ad Board, the NDA, which is the watchdog, and of course the FTC, which makes sure that the claims that are being made by brands are actually backed up by evidence. We also have other types of watchdogs from a regulatory standpoint, like the FDA. So, for example, they will survey and make sure that a cosmetic product is staying within a cosmetic scope. So, for example, a wrinkle cream that is reducing the visible appearance of lines versus a wrinkle cream correcting the signs of collagen loss, which are two different things. That delineation between correcting collagen loss versus the visible signs of skin is really the delineation between a drug, because that's now inferring that that product has a drug-like activity because it's changing a structure function. This is something that the FDA constantly monitors, especially within the skincare industry, but also there are consumer voices as well that can submit to the FTC watchdog of dodgy or bogus claims, so to speak. Back to you, Brennan.
Yeah, well, I think that was excellent, and you know, co-signing all of that. Yes, and I feel like Dr. Ilaya did a great job of explaining, you know, the FDA's distinction between a drug and a cosmetic product, and most things that we use are cosmetic products, and which is why they're sort of written in this like absolutely maddening vernacular with regard to what it may or may not reduce the appearance of. But I do think that we're going to see some changes starting next year, or maybe starting at the end of this year, because they just passed MOCRA, which is this, and I don't know, I'm not like, super understanding of it, so maybe you can help explain, but it's this effort to extend the FDA's oversight a little bit to where cosmetics are manufactured in the US?
Yes, exactly, to make sure that there's a standardization in the types of, like the procedure, the conditions, similar to the way that drugs have a defined condition that they have to meet to become a drug. So stringent standards coming to the skincare beauty industry.
Yeah, some like small business owners are really, you know, pissed off about it because it will, you know, increase the amount of hoops that they have to jump through. But I always think that more compliance and more regulation is a good thing.
Do we have time for a few more? Oh, sorry, Nancy, go ahead.
Oh, no, and it's also very important for safety too as well. So making sure, reducing any adverse reactions. I don't know, Dr. Rieder, if you'd like to contribute.
No, I'm good.
Right there. How are your hands feeling now? One of our earlier guests. All right.
Hi, my name is Tatiana, and I'm a full-time skincare content creator and influencer, and I'm also an esthetician. This is for you, Nancy, and Dr. Evan. Where do you guys, so backstory, I'm a full maximalist when it comes to like skincare. I do the full Korean 10-step, and then I also do the 7 skins method. So my skincare routine is like 20 steps day and night. And I promote that on social media also. So for you, doctor, how do you feel about the Korean skincare or the Asian skincare trend, how it's becoming very big here? What are your thoughts on American skincare trying to follow the same path as Asian skincare in terms of like creating essences and creating products with like fermentation and things like that? And also, I was trained in Asia on skincare too, so I'm like really super knowledgeable and like into like the Asian skincare things. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think skincare in South Korea and Japan are like light years ahead of what we're doing here in the United States, and I'm all for it. I mean, I'm a skincare minimalist. I want to use the products that are effective, and it's just, I don't think I gain as much enjoyment as some of maybe the people in this room or some of my patients do about doing like 5 or 6 different steps of skincare. But I think that there's something really special about that, whether that's, you may have everybody has a busy life and we're all busy in different ways. And skincare it's a mindfulness experience, right? It's getting in touch with the moment. And that's hopefully that's a time in your day that you have to dedicate to doing something where you can clear your mind of all the worries of the day, whether that's kids or school or work or whatever it is, and you're doing some fine motor movements. And if you can have the luxury to do it for 7, 10, 15 steps and you love it, I think it's amazing. Do I think all the ingredients that are coming out are so mind-blowing? Not really, but they have very nice sensorial experiences to them. And if people love them, I'm all for that.
Sorry. When it comes to Asian beauty, like Japanese, I totally agree with Dr. Rieder. Now, there's a couple of differences between the things that are formulated for Asian skin. So the rise of K&J beauty have a very different standard in terms of R&D, the formulations, the aesthetics, and just the criteria that they have to meet before they can be sold onto market. So things like a brightening cream is a special function or quasi-drug classification in Japan. Similarly in Korea and in China, and so they have to pass more stringent clinicals to demonstrate those skincare benefits. And so there is some truth in a lot of these Korean and J beauty formulations that are becoming quite big. Now, in terms of the multi-step, yes, it's all about the moment of self-care. It's all about that tactile and that, moment of relaxation, that wellness moment, but also it's also a ritual. And as I mentioned at the start of this conversation, consistency in your skincare routine is probably about 90% of your skincare's success. And so whether it's a 2-step regimen or a 20-step regimen, you're going to reap those benefits if you're religious about following that daily.
And don't forget to wash your face at night.
Yes.
Is there anything you wanted to add, Brennan?
Absolutely not.
All right, we have time for one more question.
I'm going to grab one from over here.
Okay.
Hi, thank you guys for being here. So my question is about like celebrity skincare brands. And so you guys already spoke to this a little bit when you're talking about how less is more and obviously the market being quite oversaturated. But how do you feel about that? Do you find it disingenuous for celebrities to, one, launch a line when skincare has never really been a part of their brand, so it kind of feels like they're just trying to get in on this market, and two, when they're using themselves as a representation of how their line works, when a lot of us are going to assume that their skin is probably a result of many years of like having access to estheticians, dermatologists, and products that the average consumer does not have access to or could not afford.
Brennan, you want to start? I feel like we probably
I would love to start.
deal with this frequently. Go
Well, I'm
ahead.
going to start with this little hot take, which is I think that, like, as a celebrity, as somebody who, to your point, has especially like actors and actresses, they are people who are always thinking about their appearance much, much more than the average civilian has to, and like probably know what to do when a pimple pops up on some important day better than any of us. I feel like they should almost be like legally obligated to start skincare lines, and to use a lot of their expertise, but then, you get them in these interviews and they're like, yeah, I use, X, Y, and Z, and they kind of try to play down their own personal vanity, which is always frustrating. And I think there are very, very few cases in which it really makes sense, and I'm struggling to think of an example where it's like, a really, really successful pairing of like a celebrity and with the exception of maybe like Pharrell, Human Race he created with his dermatologist. There was like a really powerful, marketing story there that I think really worked for him and is successful. And I've only heard wonderful things about the products. But yeah, I think it depends a lot on how the celebrities themselves end up going into these deals, whether they're going to just license their name or they're going to sign on with this brand and they're going to promote it for a year, but then they're going to quietly step back after a year after it has some social media legs, which I feel like we've seen a lot. So yeah, I can't think of. I think that they should be able to do it well. I think that celebrity beauty brands should exist, but not so many, and we need to make them better.
And remember, all of this information is mostly public. So I think this is another instance of you really do your research. So I think there is this base knowledge that a lot of celebrities do have of just they have seen and used the best of the best for years. Sure, I'm all for it. Share that intel with us. But there's different variances of how they're involved. Some of them are investors. Some of them are faces. Some of them have actually co-created product. Some of them have just signed on with large conglomerates. They're involved, but maybe not as involved as they might be if they self-funded. All of these things I think really contribute to how viable the product is and how viable the marketing story is. I can think of a couple of examples of somebody, we had done a story at Vogue of a celebrity who launched into the skincare space, and I had lunch with a friend. She's like, "What does she know anything about skincare?" And having known as much as I did because I wrote the story, I was like, "Well, actually, she really did her research. She really did the right thing. She shopped it around. She met with the big brands. She ultimately self-funded. She partnered with a product developer. She's been involved all the way. I think you can sniff that stuff out now. I think." And anybody who's trying to do it without going all in, it's very easy. Harry Styles might be the rare exception to this, where that brand, it can succeed just through name affiliation alone. But he's involved too. But they're not making a ton of skincare products, and those nail polishes are very cool. But it's very rare at this point that you can only dabble and the brand will succeed. So I think it's really a matter of taking a deeper dive and trying to figure out how involved is the celebrity, really, and what is their experience that they're trying to market.
And what is the apparatus that's behind them?
Yeah.
Is it are they going to LVMH? Is it an LVMH brand? Is it, one of these Amiris brands? Are they going to an incubator?
I think that's all the time we have. Thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you so much to our amazing panel.